The Day the Music Died is easily the most infamous plane wreck in music history. Throughout the years, obviously, there has been details revealed, some harsh truths addressed, and a lot of mourning, but in this video, we're going to address some lesser-known facts you might not know about the day the music died. Buddy Holly was known for a lot of things, and one of them actually is his glasses. He has the trademark horn rim glasses. Most times, especially if you are a Buddy Holly fan, amongst the first things you think of when you think of Buddy, it's going to be the trademark glasses. Shockingly enough, nobody knew the whereabouts of the final pair of glasses that Buddy Holly wore on that ill-fated flight. No one knew exactly what happened to them, and at one point, they were missing for 2 decades. Finally, in 1980, 21 years after the horrible crash, the glasses were found. They were found in an evidence locker belonging to a sheriff in Mason City, Iowa. They had just sat there for 2 decades. No one knew the whereabouts of them, but they were found 2 decades later. After finding out who it belonged to, they finally turned the glasses over to Maria Elena, who was the widow of Buddy Holly, and eventually she turned it over to the Buddy Holly Center in Lubbock, Texas, where they stay today on display. Speaking of Buddy Holly's widow, Maria Elena, she was so overwhelmed with trauma and grief at the passing of her husband that she actually ended up having a miscarriage for what was going to be her and Buddy Holly's first child. To make this even more traumatizing, both Maria Elena and Buddy Holly's own family had to learn of his passing via the news or via their friends. Buddy Holly's own mom had an interview come out several decades ago in which she was telling people she learned of her own son's passing via someone calling her phone. Her neighbor was asking her if she heard from her son recently. She thought he was doing okay. Turns out he was killed in a plane wreck. Maria Elena was the exact same thing. She learned of her own husband's passing not via a local authority, but via the news. Believe it or not, it was this very incident, the day the music died, that sparked a new policy that was passed that states that immediate family must be notified of the passing of a family member that is a public figure before the public gets a hold of it, that is, if they have any control over it at all. One of the biggest stories that came via the day the music died is the infamous coin flip story between Ritchie Valens and Tommy Allsup. Most know about the facts of this story, but what most do not know is this coin flip almost didn't happen at all. So it's the early morning of February 3rd, 1959. The then Surf Ballroom manager, Carol Anderson, is going to drive Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Tommy Allsup to the nearby airport. They're going to get on the plane and they're going to fly to the next destination, Fargo, North Dakota. What most do not know is as they were getting ready to leave, Buddy Holly actually told Tommy Allsup to go back inside and make sure they have everything. There were no roadies back in the 1950s. If you left anything behind at a previous destination, you were kind of SOL. Tommy Allsup has told this story a couple times in the past. He was pretty surprised by this because Buddy had never told him to do anything like this before, but he obliged. He went back inside the Surf Ballroom to make sure they have everything. Ritchie Valens was signing autographs in one of the doorways. Ritchie Valens, for the final time, asked Tommy if he could have his seat on the flight. Tommy pulled out a $50, flipped it. Ritchie Valens won, and unfortunately for Ritchie, his fate, unbeknownst to him, was sealed. Crazy enough, the one person who discovered the bodies of Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, the Big Bopper, and pilot Roger Peterson, it wasn't a random citizen, it wasn't the owner of the land, it wasn't some random local authority figure, it was actually Jerry Dwyer, the man who owned the plane that they had now crashed in. Jerry Dwyer was very skeptical to begin with, not because of the flight, but because he saw the taillights of that very flight going down, and he knew right away, because he had spent his life and his career around planes, something was very wrong with that picture. It was not a hallucination. Those lights were going down. Jerry Dwyer actually talked to the tower in Fargo, North Dakota, expecting to hear that Buddy Holly's plane had checked in. It did not, so this only increased Jerry Dwyer's fears even more. He knew something was very wrong. They had not checked in. He saw the taillights going down. This was not going to be good. So the early morning of February 3rd, 1959, right at sunrise, round about 7:30, 7:45 in the morning, Jerry Dwyer, an experienced pilot, got into his own small aircraft and decided to follow the exact same flight that pilot Roger was going to follow with Buddy, Ritchie, and the Big Bopper. Unfortunately, Jerry Dwyer's fears were indeed a reality, as he did find the wreckage of the plane about 5 miles northwest of Mason City Airport. According to investigations, they were maybe in the air 4 or 5 minutes at the very most. Jerry Dwyer discovered it, he descended his own small aircraft, and then he contacted local authorities to come begin the investigation. Another fact that some may not know is the Big Bopper's body was actually exhumed in 2007 to see if there was any possible way he lived through the crash and merely passed away, suffering from injury, trying to go for help, because his body was so much further than Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the pilot's body. Big Bopper Jr. was never able to meet his dad, as he was not born yet before his dad was killed, so he was very curious as well. There was some legs to this conspiracy for a long time that a lot of folks believe Big Bopper somehow, some way, survived the initial crash but then perished in the cold Iowa snow trying to go for help. More than anything else, it was more so for Big Bopper Jr. to actually see his dad in person. It wasn't in the greatest of states, surely, but his dad's body was well preserved over time. You could definitely tell it was the Big Bopper, even though he had been gone for nearly 50 years at that point. Big Bopper Sr. underwent a forensic examination, and it was ruled that he perished pretty immediately. He had broken or fractured nearly every bone in his body. There would have been very little, if any, chance at all that he was able to survive and even know what happened. Big Bopper Sr. was placed in a brand new casket and was given a brand new burial site in Beaumont, Texas for any and all to go and pay their respects. But more so than anything else, his son, after nearly 50 years of hearing stories, seeing photos, seeing videos, listening to his songs, he was finally able to see his dad. Another long-standing conspiracy that eventually got proven to be debunked was Buddy Holly's .22 caliber pistol that was found at the crash site. Was that possibly used? How was it used? And why was there one bullet missing out of that gun? This was Buddy Holly's gun, yes. He did carry a lot of cash on him. He needed some sort of protection just in case someone tried to do something stupid. Also, he got his tires slashed earlier in 1959. Buddy Holly knew him having his name becoming increasingly bigger, he needed some sort of protection. That protection, if needed, could be that pistol. For as outlandish as it sounds, there were some folks that believe that that gun was used somehow, some way on a flight. Maybe during the scuffle, maybe Buddy Holly used it on somebody else because there was one bullet missing. Why you would shoot somebody when you're thousands of feet in the air, I have no idea, but some folks believe for a certain amount of time that gun could have possibly been used on that flight. This conspiracy was debunked rather quickly as the crop farmer who owned the land the plane crashed on found the gun during the springtime of 1959. It was somehow missed during the investigation. He had no idea who owned the gun, but he fired it one time in the air to see if it still worked. He then turned the gun into the authorities and said, "I don't know whose gun this is, but it still works." Pretty much effectively putting to bed Buddy Holly firing the gun or any conspiracy about Buddy firing the gun in the first place. It was merely just the crop farmer.